Hi, I'm Callie Gleason. I'm an assistant professor at Hopkins School of Nursing. I was a bedside nurse before I went back into academia. And I'm very excited for this conference. And I'm also excited to share our particular project on improving tech literacy among low-income older adults in Baltimore City. So the title of the project was Addressing the Digital Divide to Improve Patient-Centered Outcomes Research. We called it Add2PCORE. And I want to make sure that I mention my fantastic team up front, which include Cassie Lewisland, Susan Peterson, and also Yokai. And Yokai was a graduate student who worked very closely with me on this project. And as I'm going to talk about soon, so much of it had to do with making connections with the community members. And that's where Yokai particularly shone. So to give some background, and I mean, I'm sure this has been said a million times during this conference, I'm recording it in advance. But as we all know, the pandemic in particular really highlighted how many people are left behind as we increasingly switch to virtual operations. We had a lot of meetings with community members and that were in place ahead of the pandemic that happened in person. Baltimore Connect, Community Research Advisory Councils, just wonderful meetings where we got to hear feedback directly from the community and to inform research that was happening across Hopkins. And as those meetings got switched to virtual, I mean, we all joked during the start of the pandemic, oh, we're doing virtual happy hours and such. Well, the reality is that there was also some people who were at home with a landline phone, just learning how to use their very basic government issued cell phones. And this was a pretty isolating time. This is a problem in Baltimore City, and I'm sure you guys all have come from areas where there's nearby. We're all familiar with this. I'm just sharing Baltimore City's specific information that about 40% of Baltimore households at the time of the pandemic did not have internet service, and 1/3 did not have a desktop or a laptop computer. This has improved because of federal and state funding, particularly for internet access. But those were the statistics from right before the pandemic. So we started Add2PCORE, and Add2PCORE's goal was to give, and it was made possible by funding from PCORE. I want to say that outrun. We're very, very thankful to funding from PCORE for this work. And the goal of it was to give both internet access, devices, and training to Baltimore community members, particularly targeting people with self-reported lower levels of tech literacy. So the objectives for this presentation, and it's a brief one, are to describe the experience of delivering a self-paced course using digital technology, share the effectiveness on participants' comfort, and also describe satisfaction with the program. So how did we do this? 20 community members were recruited using snowball sampling. So we worked with, this was really happening when everybody was in their houses and not leaving. Even going to the grocery store was a dangerous trip. So we had to be very creative with how we were connecting with community members. And we did it through leveraging our the people who we already had been working with before the pandemic. And I want to emphasize that if you're really doing tech literacy work and you want to reach the people who could most benefit from it, there needs to be some on the ground relationship building. And that's what I've consistently found throughout this work. So to the people who were all they were all older. They all reported having very limited access. These are people who did not have an email address, who hadn't used a keyboard outside of a bigger computer at the library beforehand. And we delivered self-paced training through one-on-one phone calls and group calls with 20 community partners. We'll say up front that we had a lot more plans for bigger group calls to do most of the training, and that's just not what happened. We found that a lot of it had to happen one-on-one because of everybody had their own issues, and connecting to the internet itself could be a 45-minute call. So we found that up front we had to do a lot of one-on-one work. We measured pre and post comfort with technology using a modified version of the functional assessment of comfort employee technology skill. And participants completed a survey of their satisfaction, and they also participated in a focus group to share their feedback. So what every participant was provided was a tablet. We very intentionally did this program to show that it could be as sustainable as possible. So a big effort was made to keep costs low. We had a PCORI grant, but we were trying to show that this could be done for little cost. So the tablets distributed were Amazon Fire tablets. On Amazon Prime Day, those were $30 to $40 for pretty decent size screens. We did an internet plan that happened through Comcast Internet Essentials. So it was $10 a month. And I think, and now that there are programs in place to get even that $9.99 a month covered for people, and that's at a federal level. So it's not reliant on one-off investigator-led projects. For training, we really worked with people on the extreme basics. We had high plans of we're going to get people into OneDrive and looking at shared documents. And no, a lot of it was focused on the basics, just accessing Wi-Fi, email, starting in people's first email address in some of these cases, and video conferencing software. So when we considered a person to have reached, a level where they would where we felt confident that we could invite them to the group sessions was when they logged on to their first Zoom with us. And a lot of the time, it was helped a lot if there was a family member there. The people who did the best were people who had a family member who wanted to help, who lived with them. People who did not have family members or lived alone, those were the ones who we were spending the most time with. So it could take as little as 1 hour to as long as 10. And that's really important when you're thinking about sustainability, because it did not require specialized trainers, but it did require people who were patient and cared and were willing to take the extra time that it needed. And that's why I made sure to thank my team up front. And I did a lot of these calls as well. So the sample characteristics of the people who took the survey afterwards, this is a smaller sample than that was involved in the total study, but you can see that they were mostly older. Every single Zoom participant was Black, primarily women, and the education level was scattered. You can see that people were very highly satisfied. For changes in tech comfort level, orange bar is after the program, blue was before the program, and there was a red little glowing ball if it was significant. So you can see that we made some significant changes for the better in tech comfort. Participant comments on their experiences, they were very positive. And I've done a lot of different programs. This was the easiest to recruit from. I hardly, after those first initial calls where we put it out there that this program was happening, my phone rang off the hook. And I ended up having a wait list for the program and still have a list of people who I reach out to when I hear of different programs. This was highly sought after. There was a lot of people who wanted to be involved, and everybody who was in it loved it, and they told their neighbors, and they wanted me to involve their neighbors in it. The learnings is that, so now there's a lot of state and federal funded programs, so that the cost of the tablet and the cost of the internet access can be largely covered. That was pretty low for us. What's absolutely the most important is having those relationships with the people, the patients. I mean, you have to think about it like you go to make somebody a Zoom account, and then they send a password back to the person's email that they have to enter in to prove that the person actually is linked to their email address. And so then the person has to open the email back up, look at a password that's complicated. We either have to teach them how to copy and paste that password, or how to put caps locks and then take off the caps, and then the different numbers. And things that we take for granted can take an extremely long time and be pretty complex for people who are not used to it. And that is like whenever anybody talks about this work, that's the first thing I talk about is the human resources and how we're going to get, patient people who are motivated and excited to do this work, because it's so rewarding and it's so enjoyable. But we cannot discount how much time it takes. Conclusion, the digital divide is called, like it's a big issue, and it remains a big issue. We've done a lot of work in policy at the government level in the United States to make it that some of like those resource issues are overcome. But if we aren't thinking about training and who's going to be there to help support the people who are living by themselves, and with everything increasingly happening over email electronically, we're going to keep on leaving people behind. So thank you so much for listening. References. If you have any questions, there's my email address. I'll leave this up for a second. I love this work. I love this project. I remain in close touch with every single partner who was involved in it. And I'm very, very committed to thinking through sustainability and have been working with them on multiple different sustainable solutions. So I'm excited to talk about it with anybody who wants to. Thank you so much.